The nature of Predators 257 Memory Transcription Subject, OA Tassie. Bissum Alien. Liaison. October 27, 2160. Finding myself staring at Ambassador Loxel, who was newly arrived to the Civkit settlement on Evrana, I couldn't help but be floored by the size of the mountain of oranges that he was sitting on. The incoming supply of oranges was what convinced him to pack his bags for our planet. Despite the speciesist remarks about being Civkit-brained, the fluffballs seemed quite clever. Their machines were resilient and meant to last, something needed for expedition ships that saw use for years. Shedding the Federation's yoke had allowed them to catch up a bit on the learning path and innovate to fill the gaps. The fleet wouldn't hold up against the entire galaxy or a strike force like we'd seen at Talsk, but we were no longer completely defenseless. Gaining two powerful allies in the Arksher and the Yotl would shield us even further, but that was why I was welcoming Loxel in person. The flamboyant Civkit needed to somehow be convinced to join an alliance that involved the Arksher Collect. General Nelter had been waiting for the battles at Afa and Nishtal to draw nearer before making a move. Those worlds were further from the border of SC space, which meant the enemy took a substantive amount of time to reach the planets, facing a scattering of FTL disruptors. As grueling as the trek was, with the interstellar distances they were traveling, it was a miracle that they could get there within months at sublight speeds. Then again, that was misleading, when their main option to speed up the process was taking out disruptors and hopping along at microscopic warp distances. I knew our potential recruits for the Carnivore Alliance would be too distracted by this impending assault to give us their full attention. The Farsal, however, were eager to swear fealty to us after we saved them and took in refugees. Gee, I wonder how the Farsal and the Civkits are getting along? We've kept them separated, but including both parties in an alliance. The Farsal destroyed and hid Tinsis, then broke the native spines and purposefully dumbed them down. Let's start with selling him the Aksa. See that the humans will not cannonade Tinsis. Elong, they'll roll over, capitulate, to the certainty of expiry. Hearken, Tassie, our days are numbered. Loxel stalked down the pile of citrus, before purposefully sinking deeper into it to take on the appearance of drowning. Death amid this glorious herbery of oranges, which you so kindly remanded, is nigh. There are worse fates. Nathalis, this humble scullion of Bissum's, is saying farewell. I accept oblivion, for we are doomed. One eon upon us. I stared at where his ears stuck out, amid the fruits, unamused. Good morning, Loxel. Remind me of our deal. For every loquacious speech I give, a Civkit refugee is eaten. I volunteer Elder Ransva. She is old, and has a dual life ahead of her. Death will be a tantivy for her. Her caducity speaks for itself. Claim her flesh now, or never. She won't make it long enough to be a plaything for the Greys. Hey, eating Civkit refugees was not our deal. Also, Loxel, you know if an Arksher took you as cattle, they would not make it through a minute of your yammering. Cut. The Civkit emerged from the fruits and placed a knife in my flippers. I immediately questioned why he was carrying a weapon, and briefly considered that he might have given it to me to frame me. Yammering was a good word for you, but you have no stage presence, Tassie. I've given up on getting you to move as you deliver your lines. Just twirl the knife menacingly, maybe place it in your beak after, then lean toward me. I'm not delivering lines. I'm trying to have a conversation. Those are the same thing. Where is your conviction? You must speak with passion. What even is your passion? Have you more in your heart than ingurgitating fish? I pressed a flipper over my eyes, throwing the knife on the ground. Finding aliens was my passion. I have lived to regret that. Tingling was a good, non-verbal. I'm proud of you. It's lacking expressions like, woe is me, or this shall be the death of me. Those are simplistic ones, with your rudimentary speech patterns. Work those in. I can feel the years of my life ticking down with each of our chats. Yes, good. I believe you there, Tassie. Because I'm speaking the truth. The Civ Kid's face turned crestfallen. I thought you like studying literature with me. I do, Loxel, I said hurriedly, not wanting to hurt his feelings. What I don't like is how you try to perform, or talk over my head, all the time, then try to make me act like a lunatic too. Act like... There is no act like, I am one. An actor must become their role, and I can't throw anything short of devotion, of one's entire being. Dedication, supplanting your flimsy whims. Transformation, rebirth. Struggling to hang on to why I'd come in the first place, I tried to get back to Nelter's goal. So you're frustrated that the humans haven't tried again to take Tinsus? And you think you're going to become playthings for the Greys? The Yorkshire have returned, and prowl somewhether in this region. An army that'd delight in a savory, recreant civkit, and you, Loxel hung on the accusatory word, circling around me, commanded them into bed. The Bisson general proclaimed it to the SC thralls. I heard it. The Yorkshire saved Tolsk. Is that supposed to be a good thing? Every crevasse of Tinsus's desert shall glaciate before we forgive a wani of those floppy-eared varlets. Aroint the farsal from these lands, Bissam. Have you any pity for a lowly grazer? Listen to me, Loxel, I pleaded. Forget about the farsal. The Yorkshire are powerful, and they have an army. Remember how you said you were upset? The humans weren't the... Naps were inventing from being around the glabrous Terrans, and getting put to sleep by their hunting doldrums. My plays are much less jejune, though I fear the Simians' performances might render it so. They are so uninteresting that they make you look spirited, Tassie. Thanks. Look, my point is, if you truly don't like how the Terrans are handling this, and you want a species that's more predatory, that might be able to go all out for Tinses, you should talk to the Arxer. They could protect you, since you're with carnivores like us, and maybe go after what you want. They also succeeded against this enemy at Tosk, while the SC lost their prior engagement. Loxel's eyelids twitched erratically. Are you saying we partner with the Greys, walk ourselves into their cattle pens, so they can rain fire on Tinsus at our behest? Retract the cattle pen part and yes. If you want a truly predatory species as an ally, that's your only option. We could make it happen. I see. Wicked delight gleamed in the Civkit's eyes, and he picked up the knife with determination. Why didn't Wayne think to sick the Greys on the thieves of our world? Take me their leader. Oh. Okay, we can do that, just not right now. I need time to, prepare their leader for this over-the-top ball of psychosis. Get in touch with the Yorkshire and arrange the meeting. We'll let you know when they're available. In the meantime, you can think over your terms and eat your oranges. There seem so very many. Loxel picked up an orange, scraping a knife against its peel in slow motion. Fine. Bring me more of these, or else. I'll, have someone bring you more soon? Goodbye, Loxel. I strolled away from the self-proclaimed lunatic, relieved that I'd improvised a way to get him to agree to an alliance with the Arxer with such ease. If Kaisel was introduced to Ambassador Loxel, however, I wasn't sure he'd be keen on buddying up to the Grand Herd. Getting Abyssin public used to the Civkits was challenging enough, when the entire area next to their village had already been stripped of grasses and vegetation. We needed to find an alternative food source for them quickly, and I didn't think we could ship enough oranges from Earth to stem the tide. The Farsal might be the ones that would have ideas on that, but I'd never consult them for their expertise on shaping species to fit their wishes. The refugees from Tosk were living a more quiet existence on Avrana. Their planet must have been quite impoverished after the war, since they reacted to our basic aid like it was an overflowing pool of wealth. Beggars couldn't be choosers, and I doubted they would exact any conditions to ally with us. We just needed to keep a close eye on them, ensuring they didn't try to change us the way they'd done curing the Arxir, or in the cultural manipulation sense. They tried it with every species. All the same, having a presentable alien race might be instrumental in getting Bissam volunteers to take in the Osiers. We had less than 2 months before the resurrected carnivores, who we knew nothing about, were born. That left the Yotl in Nalter's domain. Since he could keep up with the shrewd marsupials, the intelligence-sharing plot was a countershot at the Terrans for attempting to twist a fishing for alien intelligence scientists into a spy. I was more hopeful that I could make headway with the recruits I had proposed, the Zeruleans. Bissams had worked with their rescue crews on Tosk, and collaborated with them to divvy up the Farsal refugees. They'd been more than happy to ramp up training for our doctors abroad, focusing a lens on the Civkits and a newest get. I appreciated their charitable hearts amid the sea of extraterrestrial bigots. After talking with Loxel, video calling Ambassador Chosen back at the Sapient Coalition, sounds like a walk on the beach. The Zeruleans are not a top priority for Nalter, but they've quickly become my lifeline. I need someone with the right intentions on our team. Doctor. The brown-furred quadruped tilted his head, with the unusual semicircle ears that had caught my eye from our first meeting, and seemed to catch the Terran's eye as well. To what do I owe the pleasure? How are the refugees settling in? Hand the camera to show the scene behind me. The grand herd make the Tsaya look stationary, with how quick they move from one green patch to the next. I'm not sure they even stay in the housing we gave them. Yes, the Civkits do have that reputation. While I appreciate your generosity, perhaps you bit off more than you can chew. They can wreak havoc on worlds. I understand yours is already in dire straits. Kolia wouldn't necessarily even be willing to take them, though perhaps could find a way to offload them for your sake. What? No. I appreciate that, Ambassador, but we don't want them gone. Not as of right now, anyway. With any luck, we'll get their homeworld back, and this will all be temporary. I'm not sure Earth wants to take another run at Tinsis. Certainly not with attacks on 2 worlds. Bringing those kind of ship numbers to our doorstep. Our offensive was rebuffed decisively, more lopsided than our victory at Tulsk. The enemy at least got a few shots in there. The entirety of the Sapient Coalition didn't back Tulsk. The real test is Nishtal. I understand the humans rallied the greatest force since they took Alpha. And I made a ton of fortifications. It's no Kessler cage. The Kirkal would veto plans to add Gathos sort of defenses, I imagine. The Zerulean chuckled. That debris field was Tulsk's saving grace. If we don't stop the drones before they get there, then Nishtal is going to be obliterated. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. I suspect, as a contingency, we both should be prepared to take Kirkadal refugees as well. The relocated civilians might find their displacement is of a more permanent nature if this goes wrong. We'll be ready to help if we're needed. At least most of the populace has been moved out of harm's way. They had to be, Tassie. Their numbers were so depleted, between Nishtal's bombardment, the mass suicides after the omnivore reveal, and the civil war. They were one of the species hit the hardest, a loyal follower of Federation ideology, gutted to the bone for it. Sympathy tugged at my chest. It's a sad story. I'm disappointed just how many sad stories there are out in space. The Zeruleans seem to be one of the few happy tales. We were lucky, I guess, that our altruistic missions were deemed suitable for Farsal appropriation. Am I glad I gave the human visitor a chance all those years ago? Certainly. I listened to the science, persuaded my people, and we were rewarded for that. We landed on the right side of history. I'm sure you know what it is to be in the position of convincing your higher-ups. I chuckled. They don't listen to the experts until they realize they have no idea what they're doing, here on Ivrana. The sad part is, by the time that dawns on them, it's often too late. Ceruleans might have been like that once. The farcel making our culture wholly about medicine might have backfired on them, making the lab results have a greater sway on us. I can't say. It might look rosy from the exterior, Tassie, but there's still so much that was taken from us that knowledge of our past. Flaws. I don't know if it's a bad thing to lose your flaws. Ours have us in a global war at the most critical juncture in our history. If I could wave a flipper and make Bissums lose our worst traits. No, you don't mean that. It's still a part of you, shaping your culture with an invisible paw. It's hard to foresee the consequences of taking away one little thing. There are complex reasons for your conflict that you need to work out yourselves. I wish you'd stop the senseless bloodshed, but I wouldn't change you if I could. Not even if it wished the war away. Thank you for not judging us. I wish the SC could see us for the sum of what we are, not the worst parts. They're looking for any excuse to believe we're monsters. The humans were there once. Give it some time. It's unfortunate, but who really cares what a few small-minded parties think of you? You don't want hateful people by your side anyway, so you have to walk on glass. The Terrans had to hide a vast part of their culture to get along. Those aren't friends. We should have moved past that. You can do better. My heart felt warmed by Chosen's kind words. He had an air of wisdom about him. Thank you. I think you're right. We can do better, and I think better is the Ceruleans. We'd like a more personal alliance with anyone who won't push us away, who'll accept us. I'd like our species to be friends. Oh, we and Garay friends, dear Tassie, but I'm not sure what you mean by a more personal alliance. Would we open embassies and continue to welcome you to study in our institution? Gladly. However, we are solely affiliated with the Sapient Coalition and intend to stay that way. Since you're in the SC, we'll afford you the same privileges as any of our other allies. What if weren't in the SC, Chosen? We're a little concerned they're going to force us out eventually. They're looking for any excuse. They don't want carnivore allies. If you're unjustly cast out, we'll continue to work with you. You have my word. I hesitated, uncertain how much to tell the Cerulean. Ambassador, I'll be candid with you. Since I respect you, I sincerely want us to work together. There's a few other parties that have been left out by the SC, or are disgruntled with it as an organization. We're feeling like outsiders, so we want to establish our own sphere of influence. A union of misfits, one could say. Chosen's eyes gleamed, as he was silent for a long moment. This has something to do with you taking refugees. You want allies who also have nowhere else to turn. I'm definitely not supposed to say yes to that, but you're right. Bissums direly need friends. I know there's nothing you'd have to gain, and I'm still asking you to stand with us on the right side of history. I see. Just to be clear, what exactly are you proposing? If there's any way we could have a prolonged partnership, beyond the SC's bounds, it'd mean so much to us. It could be something as simple as working together on humanitarian missions, and signing deals to share the burden of refugees. We want to be a part of the galaxy. Bissums feel like we're left on our own, and everyone's out to take advantage of us. You're the only one who just cares. Chosen drew a sharp breath. We pushed for the SC to help you, when it became apparent that Ivrana was hanging on the precipice of ecological collapse. We'll do so again, if you need someone to stand up for you. We'd always cooperate on an aid mission with anyone willing. If having terms in writing would ease your mind, the Zeruleans would be happy to do so. Thank you, Ambassador. I, personally, appreciate your support. Don't mention it. I trust we'll meet again in the Seas Halls, quite soon. The Battle of Nishta is likely to be underway in the next few weeks, and I imagine you'll be there to see the results. I'll be hoping for the best. We all will be. Take care, Tassie. The Zerulean disconnected from the call, and for the first time since first contact, I felt pure excitement to have an alien representative pledging to stand with us. Gaining chosen support in any way was a reason to maintain optimism that Bissams could come out of this with an alliance that stood for more than self-interest. So far, I would say that General Nelter's plan to formulate our oddball alliance had been a success. With a vast majority of our target parties being amenable to joining Flippers with us, that left only finalizing the deal with the Yochul and the Osiris. The nature of predators, 258 memory. Transcription subject. Oi Chassis. Bissam alien. Liaison. Date. Of standardized human time. November 12, 2016. The United Nations had been mysteriously supportive of Bissams in the past few weeks, while offering gifts for nothing in return and smoothing feathers with our other nations. That charity had been enough to pique General Nalter's suspicions, but I wondered if the appropriate parties in the human government had been alerted to our mistreatment. There was talk about inducting us as full SC members, though there would be strong opposition to that motion, even if Arcshire Collective Aid was ultimately accepted. Our role contacting them had soured several parties on us. Today, the full might of the Sapient Coalition stood behind Nishtal. If we could not secure a more certain victory, then there was no hope of going after the enemy in their own territory. I should be curious to learn what your scout ship uncovers. I understand they'll hardly be firing up the warp engines, and be hiding away from the inhabited systems. Watching, waiting, Nelter commented to Dustin. I get that between the travel length, then biding their time to pick off a lone, manned ship in a space lane. Yet, putting a face to the enemy, that's how you unite people. Give them someone to point a flipper at. Zalk scoffed. That's exactly what I've been after with the ghost exterminators. We need to get the fucking answers ourselves, I think. The human xenobiologist arched his eyebrows. Perhaps there's no answers to be found. Not here, anyway. We have to focus on what we can fix, and what we can protect, right now. The environmental teams are working overtime on Avrana, going into active wart zones. Sending fish so you can ease up on the overfishing a bit. I don't know what your people are up to. Playing nice, that say you sure as shit won't rest the stakes of our army, all of our logistics and supplies, on you continuing to give us food. That's an easy way to take us out of the fight, making us dependent on your graciousness. It wasn't too long ago that you were planting a knife in Tassie's back. Look how that turned out. We haven't given Joan so much as a peep, since she tried that, I comment. Then why do I feel like we did exactly what that conniving human wanted? What do you mean, Zal? Nelter questioned. Jones hasn't even tried to push back. Think about it. Humanity couldn't contact the Arcshire themselves, but if we quietly influence them, and also have the Civ kids come to the bargaining table at long last? I can't shake the feeling that Nelter's plan to round up the misfits is exactly what the fuck she wanted. The Selmer's eyes narrowed. It wasn't a very waterproof blackmail rationale, but I don't see how you're paranoid, Wonder. It's on right. Can't deny the timing of when they've decided to be nice. After that all went down. It's peculiar. The Terrans wouldn't want us siphoning the Yotul and the Zeruleans away, and building a fleet of warships. There's no reason to cause such frostiness between our planets, pushing us away from them. We already were pushed away, and they knew that we were meddling. They needed support for their war. Look how our actions benefited humanity, much more than having an internal spy ever could. That's enough of the crazy talk, Zal. We've set ourselves up to have influence and power. Our military is stronger now than it was a month ago. If it benefits the sapient coalition by keeping a few planets alive, then I'm okay with that. And on that note, why don't we check in how Nishtal is faring? There was almost a Krakatla on your first contact mission, Dustin piped up. Our thoughts should be with him now. We can't afford baseless suspicion. Not when we're actually ahead, and things are improving for Bissons. I waddled toward our station in the assembly hall. I agree with him. Onso said it best. We all have to work together when it comes to our survival. What happens with the Krakatla affects us all. All eyes in the sapient coalition were on Nishtal, because their entire hopes for the war effort rested on this clash. Knowing that the different flanks of the enemy drone assault were not communicating with each other, we planned to recycle the strategies of the tungsten rods and the cloak stations from Tulsk. The Venlo were also uncorking their own specialty, as their scrapper drones were making their first appearance in battle. The Skalga natives had given their spacecraft to humanity during their defense of Earth, and lost the rest of their fleet by joining that battle. They'd replaced their dated Federation vessels by engineering unique drones designed to charge the enemy line. It mirrored their ancestral roots, plowing into foes and invaders head first, literally. I was curious to see how that fared against our foes. Ivinlo's specialty is that, not only are the scrappers built for ramming like some technocracy ships, but their pointed hull can separate from the rest of the craft. The Skalgans appreciated those tactics, and figured out a way to not make it suicide in space. With these innovations, a vessel can stay in the fight and keep shooting. Liang was seated alongside Secretary General Kuamper, as they waited to see how Venlo's scrappers fared in battle. Nalter would be watching keenly too, since, for our newly constructed fleet, Bissons and Sivkits were cobbling together bits and pieces from every SC power. We'd be ready to turn their own tricks against them, if it came to that. As messy as the war back home was, I was grateful that Ivrana's nations had the good sense to keep that vitriol from carrying over to the stars. I was also appreciative that I'd been quite detached from the consequences at home, since I'd scarcely been back to my planet. My sights were set on the bigger picture, with galactic stature, and Ivrana's survival taking precedence over petty concerns. The Krakatla ambassador squawked with impatience. How is the battle going, Lisa? I haven't heard anything, apart from the fact that there've been shots fired between your ships and theirs. We're getting our data together from Nishtil to show a coherent picture, the Venlo responded into her microphone. However, our initial results are promising. Remember, our goal is to wear their numbers down long before they get to your world. Piece by piece. These aren't all of our vessels, just the amount we were willing to sacrifice. And what was that amount? I want details. Quickly, show some urgency, please. It's not your world under siege. We won't know if the battle is won or lost for some hours yet, Kumper interjected. I assure you, Kelsel, Nishtal isn't under siege now. We also evacuated the planet's population, so there is no immediate danger to your people themselves. Lives are the most important thing, and that's been handled up front. You speak as if losing our world and seeing its culture and every construct on it crumble again would be inconsequential. Were the roles reversed, would you not worry what happened to Earth just because you'd relocated your people? That's not what I meant. Earth is our home, and is deeply important to us, and we protect it for its own sake. I understand you feel the same about Nishtal. I'm only asking you to reframe your view on the worst-case scenario. There must be some comfort in knowing your people are safe. I know that's my top concern, and remember, the worry that left the UN sleepless 24 years ago was the possibility of our extinction. You should not press me on how I'd worry about Earth. I didn't mean that humanity hadn't suffered, and you know we're penitent for our role in that. My point was that your home planet is priceless, irreplaceable. A horrific loss, even without lives in that equation. Look what's become of the Sifkits, without Tinsas factoring into their identity. Nelter cleared his throat, a sly gleam in his eyes. You mean, shacking up with rotten carnivores? I have not been one of the ones biased against you from the start. Quimper issued an irritated sigh. I know we're all on edge here, but let's keep it civilized. I'm certain what Ambassador Kelsel meant was that Tinsis was a tragedy, leaving the Sivkits to wander without any knowledge of their true home or identity. To that end, we can all agree. Please, keep our focus on the ongoing conflict. The first images are coming through at this moment. From the eyes of a few Venlil scrappers, we could see the tungsten rods nailing the enemy front lines, like lances tearing through that soft outer shell. The mathematical precision needed for the timing and coordination to be so perfect. Human trajectory systems were a marvel, so much more advanced than Bissons would have thought possible before first contact. Seeing projectile warfare as one of their oldest arts made me understand why Nelter was so enamored with studying military tactics and contraptions. The timing cleared the opportunity for the Venlil to sail, engines blazing, toward the enemy. With guns firing off several shots, and now positioned near to the enemy's locale, the pointed fronts of the drones detached. Aeration was on their side, as the piercing stage barreled through the hostile front flank. Between the rods and the unusual ramming techniques, the sea's greeting party cleaved through thousands of vessels. The difference made by having substantive Allied forces on standby was already felt. We had enough firepower to put the pressure on out of the gate, and that was a reason for optimism. Ambassador Kelsel had relaxed from his frayed mannerisms, as the enemy struggled to return fire and dispatch our first line of defense. The Venlil's guns were active, and still in play for additional precious time, while the hostiles focused on eliminating the rods. That whittled away a tad more of their numbers, still several planets back from Nishtal. And this is only the opening act. We can soften them up much more, before they ever get close to Nishtal, maybe even stop them from reaching the planet altogether. Coemper cleared her throat, seeming to receive information through an earpiece. The Krakot Vanguard are on the move, with UN and technocracy backing. Your old-school designs, with the plasma railguns, won't be very effective. That's why you're going to lob a few missiles, and serve as a distraction for our entry. Remember the space harpoons? Those pesky rods flying at them even now. We stuck more of them in a railgun to throw in their faces, up close and personal, Anso chuckled. The Kurkal's ships had shed the appearance of the extermination fleet. Not requiring manpower meant their drones could be built as lithe, almost bird-like silhouettes. Several plasma railguns focused on single targets at once, attempting to stagger their shots to avoid the liquid armor. The United Nations and the technocracy were nestled behind a wall of native ships, ready to vault over the avian line, with space harpoons prime. The enemy was picking off the bird drones with too much ease, even though they tacked on magnetic shields to counter particle beams. The Kurkadal couldn't withstand liberal usage of antimatter bombs meant for Nishtal. Their vanguard was obliterated with powerful explosions, which meant the humans and the Yotl were exposed. They'll have to act earlier than they hoped, and at a greater distance. I'm sure they had a plan B, but I'm curious to see just what that was. Our ships just got obliterated. Ambassador Kelsel squawked in horror. Our state-of-the-art, newly built ships. Duerten Ambassador, Korean huffed with impatience. Despite retaining their shield membership, the Grey Avians had been introduced as a partial SC member, and as promised, sent a small handful of ships to Neshtal's aid, alongside the Leshy. You're making them spend those fighting up here, against metal hunks with no cultural importance or lives aboard. That's a positive outcome. The fallback plan appeared to be fighting fire with fire. The United Nations and the Yotl technocracy both possessed massive stockpiles of antimatter missiles, Even if a party would never bombard planets from orbit, they were the most destructive munitions around. Their willingness to dispense dozens of these rare explosives didn't convey the difficulty in creating antimatter weapons. With enough resources, time, and willpower, the two powers had accrued enough to make a dent in the enemy's forces. Guns fired through the abyss with fervor as missiles detonated, and the gap closed between the two sides. Missiles tried to pin down ships that twirled and danced to evade, with both sides showing expert maneuverability. At the end of the day, our foes had the numbers. This strategy was only intended to slow them down. However, what the primates and marsupials advanced lacked in manpower, they made up for it with heart and firepower. The UN and technocracy worked in tandem, on the battlefield, like flippers moving together, pushing their engines to the limit to draw near and deploy the rod. The apprehension in the SC chambers was palpable, since we all could see the explosions in the panoramic view. Those represented friendly casualties. These drones wouldn't survive the encounter, but they needed to survive long enough to cripple the invaders. The enemy wasn't keen on letting them draw close, since they'd just witnessed the Venlil's ramming tactics. Just a bit further, and we sink our claws in. This is the last phase of our assault, before they reach the system's asteroid belt. They must be significantly weakened before they run headlong into the mines hidden there. The harpoons attempted to lock onto their targets, but there was only so much distance that a railgun could nail a target with a sharp rod with any accuracy. It couldn't just connect with the enemy. For maximum damage, it required an exact angle to pierce through with a pointed tip. There was no room for error, even more so than with traditional beams or bullets. Our foes had the easier task of pelting us with missiles and wearing down magnetic shielding with tireless particle beams. Moreover, while this SC movement's antimatter was used up, our hostile counterparts still had plenty left in the tank. The human Yotul advance desperately deployed interceptors and barriers to prevent direct hits from hostile bombs, but a sizable chunk still found themselves in the radius. The Sapient Coalition's battered force pressed on, throwing caution to the wind. Power was diverted away from shields to the engines, granting them a burst of speed to draw near enough to the evasive enemy. That left them a softer target, vulnerable to even simple munitions, easy pickings. The rate of our drone casualties skyrocketed within a short time, but the sole goal was to make their inevitable demise worthwhile. Human and Yotul spacecraft danced around the edge of their harpoon railgun's range. Though they'd been nearly eradicated, a few hundred friendlies pressed on with their last gasp. The hostiles couldn't retreat quickly enough to avoid ceding the last bit of distance we needed to clear. They had no way of knowing what range we required to deploy an unrevealed weapon. "Now, this is my kind of fishing trip," Nelter whispered under his breath. "Harpoons away." Without hesitation, the advance cranked out the readied harpoons and reset within a few seconds for the next. As the railguns prepared for the second wave, the first rods had reached the enemy, ripping through metal with meteoric intensity. The munitions were landed in compartments where the hostiles couldn't afford a gaping crater. It had helped that, at Tosk, we'd solidified their weak points and the general placement of critical ship functions. They hadn't passed along information of ours, due to their total silence. That left another aspect we could chalk up as an advantage in the war, since their communications blackout was hurting them. Our knowledge will be even more tilted to our side if that scout ship can nab a few prisoners and gather intelligence about our enemies. For starters, we might figure out what really became of Tinsus, and what their plans are next, after this three-pronged strike. I craved answers for why this all was happening, since it almost felt like this Calmaeus war began as soon as Bissams waded into the galaxy. Had the Sapient Coalition not contacted us, we'd be blissfully ignorant of this mess. Though perhaps it was hypocritical to say, as a scientist who'd spent my life trying to communicate with alien life. At any rate, we were here, and watching Terran and Yotul drones go down with a bang. Rods from close range were lethal, propelled at such high speeds that they didn't need the long acceleration time to make them invisible. There simply wasn't a moment for the enemy to react. Swiftness left them unseen. The harpoon railguns forced our foes to evade erratically, rendering it impossible for us to target critical areas. The enemy regrouped and walloped the remaining SC ships outside the asteroid belt, though they were bruised and bloodied in the aftermath. A little less than 15% of their vessels were wiped out. That threshold was likely to be cleared once they ran into the mines. Zulk looked enraptured as the fleet progressed through the sea of rocks, which erupted in percussive devastation. The Tsaya must be imagining adding this feature to Avrana's orbit, to stop any would-be bombers. I'd have to tell him that was ill-advised since we had regular, friendly ship contact, who wouldn't appreciate having their civilian craft blown to bits. Here at Eshtal, however, it added to the enemy's wounds. Let's not count our chickens or grow complacent, but I'd venture this is an optimistic start to our defense of the Krakatl, Coemper ventured. The bulk of our forces are still waiting for the large-scale confrontation, along with a boatload of defenses we brought to the party. The entire SC and even a few outside friends are there. Gorgon ducked his head respectfully. We're happy to be of service. Every ship counts, and can be a difference maker, just as every bomb impact causes damage. The Duertan Forum is here as a friend, and we wish to make that statement to anyone watching. The United Nations hopes to make a statement as well, on behalf of the entire SDI. We can show them what we're made of. What happens when we band together? Right now, that's the only message we can send to our enemy, and I think it's a good one. As do I, Anso agreed. For all our differences, we're united in keeping people safe and fending off evil. That's what separates us from the rest. I found sense in the statements made by the human and Yotl dignitaries, as well as a reason why it was worthwhile to continue pursuing friendship with the Sapient Coalition. After seeing what they were capable when all of their military might was directed toward a singular mission, I had high hopes for Nishtal's chances. If the defense continued in this direction, the planet might escape unscathed. I also knew that Bissons would be much better off getting them to work for our side than to act against us. This battle might send a message to more than just the enemy we were fighting against. It was a warning to the entire galaxy. The nature of predators, 259. There were 6 figures on each side, making this an unimaginable clash of metal war machines. The differences in strategies within the Sapient Coalition's ranks added personality, and made us harder to account for in a uniform way. Doser mechanic vessels were hanging by to patch up damaged drones on the fly. Nazic exterminator vessels, once used to rain fire on colonies, were now using their bloated bombing bays against the hostiles. The Harchan's chameleon ships, as the humans called them, projected a video of the sky behind them on the feed, attempting to blend in. Even the Krakattl's plasma-focused vessels had gotten an upgrade since their shellacking, attaching their lithe shapes to the top of human warships, along for the ride, free to fire off shots and detach if needed. There were many more innovations, some of which would undoubtedly prove more game-changing than others. The Gojid vessels had claws wrapped around the outside of their ship, like a shell meant to stop blows from striking the interior. Perhaps this logic was inferred from their natural defensive spikes. The Thissons had ramming ships specifically shaped like their horns, which caused the Nevox to attempt to compete with them with a 2-pronged ramming extension, looking like a human fork. I thought the Venlo's prior showing blew both out of the water, but it still gave us a different angle. Skalga, Earth, and Lyrn had sent about 1/3 of these ships on the defensive lines, not counting their earlier offensives. Last but not least, there were the shield offerings, mostly belonging to the Eski's newest, most tepid allies in the Leshy and the Duertan, who brought a more defensive angle. They were lean, well-armored, and geared toward point defenses. There weren't a lot of them, with the gray avians sending a few dozen, and the amphibians offering a few hundred. Then again, Even the average coalition members had only sent about 1,000 or 2 ships. Together, with the major powers' surplus of ships factored in, we had over 150,000 spacecraft to greet the invaders. The situation should be winning for us, having an outright numerical advantage. The question was whether we could save Nishtal from any harm. Guys, the sapient coalition, in all of its might, and each member showing up. How could they ensure that Bissams are never bombed from the heavens again? We attack as one, with all of these ships, the surface-to-space missiles on Nishtal, and an unholy amount of nuclear and antimatter warheads that have been mostly donated by Earth. Emperor, you were awfully quick to replenish your supply after using them to defend your home. The Secretary General ducked her head in acknowledgement. We used them to protect our home once. Now, we're using them to protect someone else's home. Better to have them, and not need them, than to need them, and not have them. The technocracy lives by that doctrine. We're about to see a lot more action than we can keep up with, so be prepared for a lot of jumping around. The Gojib Prime Minister piped up. Can we get an update on how each species' innovations are faring? I'd like to know whether our new Shield of the Protector's Claws ships work. The name is a mouthful, and I'd advise you to workshop it. Your generals also have their own feed and ship data. Overall, our focus is mainly on Nishtal's health and the broad status of the battle. Watching for weak points and transmitting tactical adjustments in real time. That's what our analysts are doing. It is more devastating to us if we lose our fleet, because we have all of our spaceships here. Krakow Ambassador Kelsel seemed worried that even after stapling his ships onto resilient human craft, he might lose the rest of his newly minted armada. We lose enough vessels, and we're left defenseless. Even if we win this battle, Nishtal is left defenseless should they return for round 2. Nelter tapped his microphone, a sage look in his eyes. Leave tomorrow's problems for tomorrow. You rebuilt your fleet once. Should you lose this one, you'll build it again stronger, because that would mean it wasn't powerful enough to make a difference in combat. Your allies will keep you safe in the meantime. We will stand with Nishtal for as long as it takes, Kuemper promised. Ultimately, my friends, there are no Gojid ships, human ships, Krakatlu, or Duortin ships here today. There are just sapient coalition ships, standing as one. Because of that, I believe we're going to claim the most commanding victory in our organization's history today. The question is, do you? Anso wiggled his ears mischievously. Of course I do. We took out 20,000 and change ships, with a few Skalgan scrappers and some slapdash bomb. Now they meet our fighting force, where numbers are in our favor. 85% left to go. Should be easy as pie. There's more Skalgan scrappers and slapdash bombs here too, Governor Lysa commented. We've prepared plenty for this defense, and they're flying right into our waiting arms. The moment approached on screen, with the enemy encircling Nishtal. They looked like an insect swarm from the viewing drone watching from afar above the planet's north pole. The nuclear warheads were mostly positioned on the planet's lunar satellite, and I could see them ready to be fired at a moment's notice. The explosives would provide a quick and easy way to reduce the invaders' numbers out of the gate. The United Nations had flown in powerful kinetic railguns, since the ship-busting lasers were ineffective against the liquid armor. It all followed their space harpoon gunplay, which I knew they'd start off with here. So far, our foes didn't have an answer to the piercing rods, and I doubted they would compensate for the weapon's presence now. They don't have a response to our plans as long as they're not relaying our strategies back home to someone. They haven't made any adjustments since Tinsus or Talsk we have. Our feed cut over to the eyes of a technocracy drone, thrusting our perspective into the heart of the battle. Flanked by tens of thousands of allies, our vantage point vessels surged forward. Sensors revealed human nanodrones, pouring out in mind-bending quantities from the lurking spacecraft carriers. I watched the nuclear warheads crest ahead of the camera. Their speed somehow surpassed the swiftness of a starship. That was the cue. Fire the harpoon railguns. Poles of tungsten were hurled through the void, as microscopic automatons and thousands of nukes inundated the enemy. Their dust guns couldn't eradicate enough threats to avoid the preliminary impacts, with telltale flashes amid the endless night. For the brief moment they lasted, those detonations were brighter than the stars, a literal shining light in the dark. I channeled Kuemper and Anso's optimism, allowing my own to make a brief reappearance. I wanted to believe in that swift victory the Terran leader had promised with such confidence. The drone whose eyes we were looking through zigged and zagged, twirling around particle beam munitions and throwing up missile interceptors. The Sapien Coalition's fleet felt powerful. This was our chance for us to push the enemy back and put this entire strike force down for good. From this view, the entire battle seemed much less impersonal. That's what 5 digits worth of casualties looks like, Anso growled. Now that we've hit that figure, it's time for us to speedrun up to 6 digits. Wipe them out. Our technocracy drone offered suppressing fire with its particle beams, giving Venlo scrappers a chance to move in. The collisions were almost imperceptible, without magnification. Once the lens zeroed in on a few enemy hulls for the viewer's benefit, I could see metal lacerated by the detachment of the ramming point. Venlo weapons carved them up like a fish being gutted, leaving disabled husks and torn bogies in their wake. Mazik's unloaded antimatter bombs to complement their efforts, from ships built only to house those explosives. Our fleet had kept the hostiles far back from Nishtal's orbital range, so they had no chance to get a crack at the surface. We were ready to shoot down any inbound explosives, even if they did get a shot off. The humans pelted the foes with mini-missiles, then harpoons, followed by kinetics. In the brief span, I diverted my attention to their efforts. Alternating between every munition, we had kept the enemy on their toes. The Krakow warships, using the docking port to staple themselves to the UN's bulky fighters, had plasma weaponry covered. While ineffective against the hostile drones, they took to picking off missiles lobbed our way. Nishtal's own surface-to-space missiles had also rode in to badger the enemy, a successor to the Terran's warheads. The technocracy ships looped back, in time with the Venlo, reforming defensive positioning. Our foes would come to us in this instance, and might find it to be like running into a brick wall. Secretary General Kuemper used a laser pointer to highlight the enemy ships on screen. If you look across the formation, you'll notice there's very little variance in the hostile drones. I think it's worth noting how much easier it is to gather intelligence with a single ship mold. Also, the uniformity is in striking contrast to our union of multiple species. They're arrogant. They think these ships are the end-all, be-all, that they've accounted for every possible weapon, and that they don't need anything different in their fleet, Anso added. It reminds me of the ubiquitous design seen in the Federation military. I'd like to know if they're an unimaginative single species, or if there's something more at play. It should be enlightening when we acquire some answers at last. The ships are quite good. Yours just seem a bit better, Kirkotl Ambassador Kelsel countered. Oh, they are. So far, the Sapient Coalition has only taken 1,000 hits. The enemy is scrambling from sensory overload with all of the different unknown threats. Our kill count here in the inner sanctum, hovering around 20,000 at the moment, speaks for itself. The kill-to-death ratio only grows our advantage. Now we keep the heat on them and can afford to double-team them. They'll be below 6 figures any moment. The Yotel's prediction would likely be true, as the Fistens and Nevox brought their weaker ramming ships in to build on what the Venlo had built. The Nivok's two-pronged ramming extension was interesting, especially since they could expand and contract the tips. Lining up the proper angle allowed them to take out 2 ships at once. The Gojits tried to draw the enemy's fire, while the Harchin's chameleon vessels were slingshotted closer with engines quiet. The spiky mammal's drones proved able to absorb multiple hits, with the claws designed to break off from around the craft. The technocracy drone we watched from had never ceased firing harpoons, even as our rod supply was running low. I felt satisfaction, seeing the enemy ship count plummet. We had them below 100,000, and still falling fast. The automaton we were looking through doubled back toward a nearby Dosser mechanic ship that explained how they planned to restock the space harpoons on the fly. We switched over to peer through a human vessel's eyes. The defensive formation of our heavy hitters was designed to lure the hostiles forward, almost as if something's hidden there, I whispered to Nauter. A cloaked station? The Selmer folded his flippers. I suspect we'll see in a few short moments. When humans are involved, I hear their fortifications have fortifications. That Seiya could learn a thing or two from that mentality. Zalk added ominously. The enemy crested over a cloaked station, which detonated, unleashing its fragments and destructive power right in the heart of the aggressor's fleet. The Nevoks and Fissons, who'd been nipping near the front lines, were conveniently positioned out of the blast radius. The hidden outpost's explosion was the most devastating blow yet, consuming thousands of ships on its own. It damaged thousands more, and the Krokot took the opportunity to pick those off, targeting plasma through gaping holes in their hulls. Just as the enemy had pulled back with suspicion, and all seemed quiet, a second explosion tore through the rear guard. Despite having one's placement further out, the humans had waited to draw them deeper in. From the starting number of 150,000 invaders, there were now 80,000. Almost halfway there, whether there is a third station or not, the hostiles are shooting at empty space now, less bullets shot at us. This is a hopeless fight for them, since we've only lost a few thousand ships, even with those aggressive actions. We'll find out if they have a retreat algorithm. There wasn't a countermeasure available, short of shooting them down or blocking them, and the enemy didn't seem to have physical barricades like we had. After letting our foes shoot at empty space, searching out any other cloak stations, we deployed some physical barriers. I felt a bit confused as we crept backward, getting out of range and hunkering down. The hostiles weren't stupid enough to wander into another seeming trap. They shot at the barricades. However, once we'd backed up sufficiently to not be the nearest metal object, that was when the Terrans revealed these were no ordinary barricades. They're gigantic super magnets, Nauta breathed, as the barriers, large enough to obscure spaceships, and thus yielding a massive amount of pull, were attracted to nearby hulls. The SC figured out the composition of the enemy frames at the last battle. They're mines that get attracted straight on top of a ship's hull, basically turning them into a flying grenade. I wish the Selmer General didn't sound so giddy, like a kid at a fishing dock for the first time. The magnets adhered themselves to the hostile ships and blew the flighted status itself. Sure enough, the barricades had explosives attached onto them. Drone fragments damaged any other vessels in proximity, a chain reaction formed by the truckloads of barricades. For the tens of thousands of United Nations ships, they each had multiple barriers. Even once the first magnet struck, the invaders scarcely had time to respond to that absolute bounty of mines, with our hand play and our false retreat allowing more vessels to replenish ammo. The defending spacecraft returned to firing every munition they had. The numbers had been halved down to 40,000 in one snap of the humans' fingers. They looked the part of a power that had defeated a galactic empire in mere months, for the first time since this new war began. It was because they were standing shoulder to shoulder with their allies. The support compensated for their shortcomings, and let them go to town with new machinations. Ambassador Corajan gawked at the carnage on screen. Humans are absolute masters of killing and vengeance, yet you wonder why the shield fears you. Did you people actually need the wingful of ships we brought? Of course we did, Cumber countered. We still dying, until no hostile vessels are left standing in an SC system. So, soon. We have more than 3 times their ship count now, Anso chuckled. We didn't want this war, but now that it's here, we damn sure better win it. If there had been a shred of doubt in the battle's outcome, it seemed certain that Nishtol was impregnable. Out of desperation, the invading fleet was unloading every one of their bombs for the planet into our defensive formation. That meant that, even if our vessels all disintegrated now, they'd have nothing to bombard the planet with. The sheer volume of antimatter was enough to stagger us for a moment, and cut down 10,000 ships. It almost seemed spiteful on the enemy's behalf, knowing they were lost, and trying to take as many of us with them. We had to finish them quickly. Thousands of harpoon guns were still ripping the enemy apart on our side, ticking down 4 digits worth of kills alone within a brief time. The human drone we watched from now captured a second wave of surface-to-space missiles joining the fray. The invaders couldn't spare any attention to them, and got more hulls smashed in from those explosions. The Venlo moved in to clean up remnants, even with the ramming stages detached. They had quite the arsenal. The Harchin were still chipping in with hidden volleys, and beat-up Gojid vessels dumped every munition they had on their last legs. The United Nations thought that was the right idea, using mini-missiles to exacerbate the damage. The unified forces of the Sapient Coalition, 6 digits strong, eliminated the last gasps of enemy resistance in the system. With only a few hundred ships left, we noticed them trying to warp away and escape, a retreat algorithm. The humans gave chase, relishing the easy hunt in the stars. Nishtal had never come close to being in peril, and the hostiles were routed. I could see the blue Avian's ambassador shaking with visible relief before flying to the front of the hall. Coemper arched her eyebrows in surprise as Kelsel wrapped his wings around her. She hugged back after a moment's hesitation. Look what we're capable of when each of our allies shows up to help, the Secretary General commented. I'm delighted to have such a commanding victory in the books, and to have been able to save Nishtil another glassing. Let's celebrate. To us. Cheers erupted throughout the auditorium, and I joined in with my own happy cries. This was exactly the result the Sapient Coalition needed to reaffirm our convictions, and our optimism that we might prevail against an enemy who'd come to destroy civilian lives indiscriminately. As long as we continued to work together in the future, I was certain we could come out on top.